All right, welcome back. What we're going to do this time is we're going to set up a nice little metric stack. And it's going to be the Grafana stack, so we're going to use Loki, Tempo, Prometheus, Grafana to visualize everything. Loki's going to store logs in MiniIO. I don't know if it's working like perfectly, but it's at least a starting point if you want to explore that area. And then we're going to use Traefik, not with Let's Encrypt yet. I'm going to do that in like a future video because I think I could spend more time in actually like configuring Traefik. But we're going to get us some nice dashboards. We're going to set up Node Exporter. We're also going to set up CADvisor. I'm deploying this on a Raspberry Pi, but you can also do it on a VM. I'm also going to deploy CADvisor and Node Exporter also on my personal like Linux machine that I'm using on to view this. So you'll get a nice little example, and we'll be able to visualize some dashboards, and let's get started. All right, so the first thing you need to do before you start is just make a repo. I made mine in GitLab. It could be whatever you want. Just make a repository that you're going to put this in because we're going to use GitOps, which means we're going to do everything through Git. So you'll commit, and then Portainer is going to sync to that repo and deploy all your containers. So really easy to set up. I've done it in previous videos. All right, so once you have your repository all set up, you're going to clone this project and then going to hook this up to your Git repository. You can fork it, whatever you want to do. Doesn't really matter. So I'm going to just kind of go over it. First, I'm going to start with that Fluent Bit config. So really simple. We're just kind of setting some basic defaults for Fluent Bit, and I have a way for you to modify them with environment variables in case you want to change things on the fly. We're setting up this HTTP input on this port. We're setting up some tail input, so we're going to get the traffic logs and the access log, and we're just going to read it straight off the path since we're on the same node, like the same on the Raspberry Pi. And then we have this open telemetry input. And then, so now we have filters. So really simple. We're just going to expect a trace ID, session ID. If it's not there, it's just going to create one. If there's a record called timestamp, we're going to rename it to time. This is going to be if it has a prefix of service, we'll add service API. If we're going to have traffic logs, we're going to add node metrics. Traffic logs, we're going to add service traffic. The traffic access log, if we match that tag, we're also going to say it's from the service traffic. And then we're also going to say it's from node metrics as well. And then we're also going to add a special one saying its access log is true. So this way we can filter out the service traffic and say, hey, I don't want the access log. We can say it doesn't equal true. We're also going to parse the traffic logs. There's a field name log. We're going to use a JSON parser. And then with the traffic access logs, we got to do the same thing. And then we're going to just pipe everything to standard out. That way for the demo, you can see that. I'm probably going to disable this in the future. We're going to forward them to Loki, and we're just going to forward everything. For labels, we're going to say the job is off the Pi. That way you know where these are coming from. For open telemetry, we're just going to capture everything, send it to Tempo. And then for parsers, really simple. I just have a parsers file. It's going to be in config parser, so I got to make sure I put this there. This is just the most simple thing, simple JSON parser. So super simple. And that's about it. So let's go look at the Docker Compose. So I'm just going to call it log service. Using Fluent Bit, this version. We're creating this metrics network. And these are just some buckets we'll get into later. But we're going to create a logs bucket that we can share and mount into different containers. And then we're going to mount that to the directory logs so we can scrape those. We're going to put them all in a nice little central location. We're going to copy in these config into a folder called config. We're going to tell it where that config is. And then these are just some simple labels. We don't really need to worry about them right now because we haven't had Traefik enabled. Them just doing some shortcut work for you if you want to explore Traefik more. For Traefik, very simple. We'll go over the Docker Compose. We're just using it. I always give them a container name and host name. That's something I like to do just because it's easier to work with. I know exactly what I'm naming it, and I can reference that in other spots, and I don't have to like hope that it gave it that name automatically. Attaching everything to the metrics network, exposing ports 8443, binding that logs folder. That's important. And then I also created this rate limit middleware, which you can modify to your liking. You can use it if you want, you don't have to. But let's look at the Traefik YAML. So we're not setting anonymous usage. I don't like doing that, but I do like checking for a new version. Insecure skip verify. This means we don't have to have certificates on containers and we can just connect no matter what. This is how you can add a certificate, like change the default one. I just left it commented out. I'm also not forcing redirect yet. You can enable this if you want, just uncomment it. HTTP traffic will automatically upgrade to HTTPS. We're enabling metrics on port 8083. This is, I don't know, for some reason I always just do that. I don't know why I pick 8083, but I like it. And then we're going to expose the Docker socket, and then we're going to not expose them by default, so that we have to set the label traffic.enable equals true. And then we're going to watch for changes. You can enable the file directory if you want, but I really don't want to. I'm trying to not use the file. It's kind of a big pain. And then we're enabling the API. We're going to enable the dashboard. I just like to enable the debug mode in case you need to. But you can put false if you want. Metrics, just kind of standard defaults for Prometheus. We're also enabling a health check that'll be available. You can pick the log level that you want. So if something's going wrong, just change the log level. File path, logs, very important. That's where our Docker volume is. And then traffic.log, traffic access.log. So in Fluent Bit, that's what we were referring to right here, those files. So I'm just also doing a filter, only these status codes, if there's retry attempts or if they exceed that duration, add them to the access log, and that's where I put it, same path. And that's pretty much it for Traefik. So what's the next service? Let's move on to Grafana. So Grafana is pretty simple. I'm doing it in like a no auth, just open mode. I mean, if you don't want that, you can modify Grafana. This isn't really about Grafana, but I'm just using Grafana to kind of show the logs and how we're collecting them. So change that if you want. I'm probably going to leave it like this for a while until I figure it out. But I did install the pie chart panel, so there you go. I am opening port 3000 just in case something doesn't work. You can still just go straight in through the IP address port 3000. And then this is the one I'm using. So I'm using metrics.isvc. So that's just a private DNS route I set on my router. But I can only do one, so it points directly to here, and that's all I can do. And then in Grafana, I just have set this up for you. It just points to these data sources for Prometheus, Loki, and Tempo. So you don't even need to touch that. It's all set up. And that is pretty much it for Grafana. I'll get into adding these dashboards later. I just have these all customized, and I kind of tweaked them a little bit. Like in Traefik, I also added the logs underneath. So you can add these if you want. Let's move on to the next service. So Loki, pretty simple. I followed the base config a lot. So give it a same thing, container name, host name, opening up this port just in case you don't want to use Traefik. You can feel free to disable any ports. Just know that. So in Loki, I don't know if this is working perfectly. I might need to make some tweaks, but basically I just set up the S3 store to MiniIO. And this is just some access key, and it's extremely temporarily. I'm going to be changing this to a completely MiniIO instance. But feel free to like modify these if you want to if you change this. Just be sure you set that here, and you're setting. I'll get to that in a moment. But you set that when you deploy MiniIO. You set that in an environment variable. So I just left it as tempo, super secret. And then that's kind of simple. I don't really want to get too deep into this because I might need to fix it, and I want to do this kind of in the future. So let's go to the next service. So Prometheus, same thing. I'm just kind of doing some simple configuration. Just kind of copy this. It just works. Put it on the metrics thing. We're just saying where the config file is. So this is the config file. We're setting up to scrape Prometheus. This is the metrics, the log service. So this is for Fluent Bit. I'm going to change this to metrics. that makes more sense for you guys now. And then so yeah, that's going to scrape the Fluent Bit for its metrics. It's going to scrape Traefik for metrics there, Loki, tempo. And then also you might need to change this to your IP address of your host. I don't know if it works. If I, let's try, we'll test it out. I'll test it out in the future. You might be able to do 127.0.0.1, but I don't know if that will work. So I just did the host, that's my IP address. So change this to whatever the IP address of your server is, and it should work. So I did the metrics, the node exporter, and then CADvisor. And then also I did it on my personal machine. So when we get there, you can just copy and paste those and deploy them on your machine, and then just put your IP address in, and it should pick them up. So let's move on to the next one. So tempo, same thing. Just kind of all defaults, honestly. Tempo's not pointing to S3. Oh, it is. So tempo's pointing to S3 in MiniIO. And then kind of just set all the defaults. I didn't really change a whole lot. So let's get to the next one. MiniIO, this is completely temporary. You can set your access key, password, so username, password. I was trying to get these logs to work. These weren't working, but they didn't affect it at all, so you can ignore that, delete them if you want. I'm going to persist the buckets. And they all exist in data, so I had like a tempo bucket, Loki data, Loki ruler, and these are all get added initially. And then let's move on to the node exporter. So you can literally just use this as is, just copy and paste anywhere on any Linux host machine, and these will work, the CADvisor and node exporter. So pretty simple. That's the project. So I do also have this log test where you can send some example logs. So I'm going to send some to that service. So they should get service API added on to the log. And it just sends this log file, just some example logs. And I have a make file if you want to run this all locally. So if you run make start, it'll build everything. And then it will start up and restart all the containers, wait a couple seconds, send the logs, and then stream the log service to see if it works correctly. So you can run that if you want. But what I'm going to do is I've made some changes. So let's add them. So git commit, give it a nice message. Update metrics. Boom. And then I'm going to get pushed, right? So now I have that pushed. So let's go over to Portainer. So Portainer, you're going to set up your project. So mine's already set up, but let's just kind of mimic doing a new one. So name it whatever you want. I named mine metrics. This won't let me because I already have one named metrics. Click repository. Do authentication. If you did the business edition of Portainer, which you should because it's free, you can just pick a credential that you have already set up. And then you put your repository URL in. So let's go here, copy that. Boom. So now I have that, and I make sure it goes to the master branch. It selected it already. It selected the Docker Compose file. And then what you really want to do is enable relative path volumes. And what I did is GitOps, and then I think I did metrics. So that's what I did with that. Also, automatic updates. I did mine every 5 minutes, and that was it. And then I hit deploy. So this won't work. I already have it deployed. So what'll happen is it'll deploy everything. And so I'll simulate that by updating mine since we pushed changes. It does take a second, so it's got to pull all these containers. So once it pulls all of those, it's funny, this is on latest and it says it needs an image update. But I don't think it does. So these should all, so yeah, it's going to pull every single one of those, create the networks, create the volumes for you. And this is already on my Raspberry Pi. So that's where I deployed Portainer. But I mean, you can set up a Portainer agent. Maybe I'll make a video on that in the future. But you can use the Portainer agent and then use Portainer to deploy a stack on that instance, which I just don't want to navigate away from this page. Make this in a new tab. But you can see I have 3 instances going. So you could pick one, see your stacks, and then deploy another one. So that's kind of how that works. All right, so now we're going to get into the demo side. So I'm going to visit that Grafana instance. So I put in that URL that I gave it, and it took me here. So that means Traefik is working correctly. And I'm going to show you how to import those dashboards. So what you could do, let me open this back up. So these dashboards, there's a couple different ways you could do it, but you just hit import, and then you can drag. It doesn't let you drag the file in through VS Code, but if you open up the File Explorer, you can. Or you can copy all the JSON and put it in there. But it's going to say it already exists. So kind of annoying, so I don't need to do that. But that's how you can load them all in. So for example, we're going to start this up. So now you can see this is how all my containers have been running. I can check like the last 5 minutes, last hour, 6 hours, whatever I want, you know. And then I can also go to my Linux host metrics. So I can see my Raspberry Pi is using 7.1% of memory. I can change it to my computer. So you can see I'm only using 17%. I can see like all my information. Pretty cool. And then we can check out Traefik. So I added these in down here. So you get the access log that it's streaming directly. And then you also get just the regular Traefik logs. And then you can filter them through here. So there shouldn't be any errors. Hopefully not. Yeah, no data. But if I do info, I think they're all info. If you enable debug mode, you can see the debug logs. Also, you can see I'm picking from the Raspberry Pi. Boom, so there we go. And then we can go to Fluent Bit. You can see how Fluent Bit is doing. I don't really know how to use this dashboard too well. But let's see if I go last 30. Yeah, I don't know. But I have it in there for you so you can look at it. Now, if you want to explore the logs, this is what gets cool. So we're going to go to Loki. You're going to hit this compass, Loki. And then it should auto-populate these. If it doesn't, it means something's not working. So you're going to hit job. And then mine was pi. So job pi. Oop, you can't see that. Job pi right there. And then what you can do is add a JSON parser. I'll do it the manual way. So formats, JSON. And then we're going to add a label filter. So I'm going to search for a level. Oops. I hate when I do that. Let me get back there really fast. Oops. Bye. So we're going to say level info. Boom. Run this query. So now I can see everything in level info. I can not wrap the lines. I can use prettify it, which just kind of prints it out like this if you want that. But what's cool, remember I added that access log equals true. So now I'm going to say label filters again. I'm going to say access log does not equal true. So now when I run this query, there we go. I just spelled it wrong. So now I can put access log does not equal true. And then now all these pop up. So I can filter those out. So right now I'm just sending Traefik's logs, but it's just a nice example because it does make a lot of, definitely makes a lot of logs. But that's why I added. I customized this dashboard here, so that way it'll query those logs for you right off the bat. And then you can change the job too. So like if you have a different instance of it, or if you want to look at this one, and then feel free to always change the time. Like you're going to get different kind of, be able to visualize these differently based on the time. You know, there might not be any logs, or it might be like, oh, you changed stuff too much, but just kind of give it a sec, refresh it. And that's how it works. And then what we're going to do to also demo this is we're going to go ahead right here. Let me make this bigger. Boom. And let's do log test. So we're going to send those logs. Now if I go over here, so we should get our logs pop up. Boom. Oh, and you can see we have some new ones. So let's add a new filter in. And let's say this time service equals API. So let's run that query. Boom. So now we have these popping up, and you get a kind of a nice little visualization here. So you have this nice view. You can prettify them so you can see, and then it'll kind of highlight these like, oh, this is a level warning, info, you know, all this stuff, error, debug. So it's pretty cool. You can see it also changed timestamp to time. Added these trace IDs on, made sure they exist, added service API. So that's kind of what you can do to use this metric stack. You can forward your logs to that endpoint. If you look at the script, you can see I tagged it. You can tag it with anything. It doesn't matter. Like I can just call it service.log. And then I'm going to have new logs pop up. Let's say in the last 5 minutes. Boom, and I already had more pop up. So there we go. I have my new logs in from debug up. Service API, did them just the same. So there you go. Demo done. All right, so we set up a little metric stack. We deployed it on a Raspberry Pi. We use GitOps. So now if you want to make any changes, all you do is change your project, push up your changes, 5 minutes per or deploy it. You could go just push deploy if you want. And then, yeah, we're forwarding all of Traefik's logs there. I showed you how you can send some example logs to the HTTP endpoint, how you can filter through them. You have all your custom dashboards. So you guys are set up and good to go. This is pretty exciting. Metrics is definitely something I've been wanting to get into at work. This is something I'm kind of currently setting up, so I've been able to kind of explore a lot of this. I think Grafana has a great little solution. Definitely can deploy it in Kubernetes. That'll be in the future. So definitely let me know how, if you guys have trouble deploying this, how it went. Yeah, like let me know what you guys like to see in the future. What are you guys, what are you guys scraping? What metrics you guys getting? What logs are you collecting? How are you guys doing it? Let me know. And in the comments also leave if you'd like to request any videos, whatever. Let me know. Thanks, guys.